30 to 50% of your fractures produce 80% of your hydrocarbons.
That lends a lot of credibility. If you come in and can be upfront and honest and say, actually in this application, I think this product over here that I don't represent would be better for you. That all of a sudden now you become a trusted advisor rather than a salesman.
And I often say that we have all the requirements of space, right? Because it has to go underground and send us data from miles and miles away, and it has to work. Like, failure is not an option.
We'll put on, a standard mule shoe. Ours is slightly different just for that, but it's, everybody's got one.
The top drive and the drawworks really don't care whether the electrons coming at it are from a joystick or a PLC.
The panel, what you see here on the left, which is now controlled by one of my students, is showing you actually the control of our brakes.
As of now, geothermal is a pretty small market.
If you have tortuosity, the casing will be up against the side on part of the well. There won't be any cement there. The cement will have crescent around it.
So managed pressure drilling, it's been defined as a process to precisely control the pressure profile in the wellbore.
The key is being transparent with our clients in this case. So tell them what happened. If we had a failure, tell them exactly what happened. Whether it's our fault, whether it's whatever the issue was, we need to be transparent.
I think it's very important for everyone in the industry to know what's out there and kind of what's happening downhole as well.
I've probably worked on over 40 different performance limiters in my career. If I miss any of those and the computer is raising weight on bit and I miss any of those, I have a train wreck. Computer's going in the ocean.
Here's your new colors, here's your new thing. We don't do that at all.
Here's the tattoo you need to get.
Yeah, here's the tattoo. Sorry about the last one. We used to fake that all the time.
Hello everyone. Welcome to the Locksmith door. I can't say it.
V-door locksmith.
V-door locksmith.
Hey everybody, welcome to the show. This is the V-door locksmith show where we are unlocking the secrets to success in the oil and gas industry. One interview, one technical presentation, and one technical screw up at a time. Thank you all so much for being here on this Friday and taking part in the show. As per normal, please let us know where you guys are watching from. We'd love to be able to give everybody a shout out here on the screen as we go through. We've got lots of topics to be able to cover today, a lot of stuff that's happened this week. It's absolutely mind-blowing how many conferences took place at the exact same time. We had the IADC Advanced Rig Technology conference that was essentially Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. They had the geothermal rising, something called Image that I think has to do with geothermal stuff as well. Didn't hear too much about that one, but obviously a lot about the geothermal rising conference out in Reno. So everybody that was out there obviously enjoying gambling their money away and also spending lots of time with everybody else that was in the industry out there. So like I said, please give us just comment, let us know where you're watching from. I don't know how it is, but John DeWart's always the first guy to be able to jump in there. But John, thank you so much for watching. Do appreciate it. Obviously missed you at the IADC art event. I know you normally take part in all of those. Then we've got Justin tuning in from Abu Dhabi. Thank you for being here. LinkedIn user from Aberdeen. All right. Not sure who that one is. LinkedIn user from, it's Robert. He said, at least, see, he knows what's going on. It's probably Robert Estes. I think that's who it is. I think he's figured that one out. Tuning in from Tomball, Texas. If it's not that one, whoever the other Robert is, thanks for watching. Chris from Houston, thanks for being here. Frank, tune in from Anchorage, Alaska. Thank you so much, sir. I actually need to give you a call, sir. And then we've got LinkedIn users. Greetings from Dallas. Go, Robin Macmillan. That's right. Go, Robin Macmillan. That's right.
Where's that one from?
Dallas.
Oh, Dallas. Oh, yes.
I wonder who that might be. Don't know.
That
We got a lot of LinkedIn users today. A lot of people that got their accounts. Essentially, that means you've got your account set on private. So if you guys do like this, please give us a share or tag somebody that you know in the comment section. That helps with just being able to get the show out there for more people to be able to watch. I know it'll all start kind of flowing in here in a minute. Travis and Bowden, Oklahoma, thanks for being here, sir. Another LinkedIn user. What did LinkedIn change their privacy policy over the last week? Wow, it's a lot more than normal. John, tuning in from Austin Hill Country. John, if you're in the Austin Hill Country and you're doing some geosteering, you got to come in here and maybe we need to do a show and somebody teach us about geosteering. Neil Fletcher. Morning, David and Robin. Thanks for being here, Neil. All right, I'm going to jump out the phone just to be able to check and see, make sure that the LinkedIn actually did send out the notification that we are live. Yeah, it did. Okay. We've got plenty of people watching. It's still growing. All right. It's moving right along. All right. Who else we got there? Next one. Oh, yeah. Sorry. Somebody's tuning in from Winnipeg. I didn't see. Ahmed. Ahmed is tuning in from Winnipeg. Thanks for being here. LinkedIn user from Robert Martinez. That's who it is in Dallas. All right. Thanks, sir. And then K Jackson tuning in from next door. He's in a meeting. Eric Allen, LinkedIn user Eric Allen from Dynaqual. Andres tuning in from London. Thank you, sir. And then David tuning in from Banff. Banff, it's beautiful. Wow, what a place to. I mean, seriously, you could be in Banff and be looking at anything else, and you're watching this show. That is an absolutely huge compliment. Absolutely huge compliment. All right. Time to do our fun stuff that we normally do every Friday. We have got an absolutely amazing partner here with the show, Corva. So we want to be able to give away a drill bit. Yeah, scroll all the way. Yep, there it is. We want to give away a drill bit. So, oh wow, that was kind of cool. Blue, purple. Right. We're gonna give away a drill bit. So if you guys want to win a drill bit, type in right now #Corva. Oh, did we start the? Oh, you already clicked it? Yes. Oh, look at that. Tracy is like the best employee. I tell you guys what, best decision ever made to be able to hire an assistant. So type into the comment section now, #Corva, and this is your Corva Insight of the Week.
So one of the biggest challenges that the industry faces today is data, and not just a data storage, but data management and how you're storing your data and what metadata that you're assigning to it. So one of the things to consider when storing your data and acquiring your data is how you're going to use it in the future, whether that's with other applications, with internal development, or just analysis. So the big thing to consider is to put as much metadata to that data as you can for future use.
All right, guys, there it was. That was your Corva Insight of the Week. Thank you guys all for participating and typing in #Corva. So now we're going to do our little drawing here real quick and see who the lucky winner is of the week. How many we got so far? 12. Let's give it another 10 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That was probably not a full 10 seconds, but 12 entries, and one of them is actually me this week. So if I win, we'll just redo the drawing. Let's see here. Brian Dues, there we go. Brian is the winner this week. Thank you so much for tuning in, sir. I do appreciate it, and we will get that bit sent off to you very shortly. And that was your Corva Insight of the Week. Thank you so much. All right, on to the important stuff. Our guest of the day is Robin Macmillan. Robin, thank you so much for being here, sir. I do appreciate it.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Excited to be on the show.
Yeah, it's good to see behind the scenes as well. Having met Tracy, I now know who really runs this place.
That is absolutely 100% the truth.
Yeah.
I just sit over here and play on the computer, and she's the one that's
yeah, I can see that now. Your secret's out now.
Yeah, that's not good.
Yeah.
All right, everybody knows. I didn't know I was looking at the wrong camera. I'm gotta be looking at that one.
Am I looking at this one?
You can look at it.
Okay. Okay.
All right. So, like I said in the intro there, we've had a couple of conferences this week. Obviously, you and I were at the IADC conference, and I know we've got a lot of things to be able to talk about, and I completely messed up the order of that. But let's
have no order. Let's just keep going.
Yeah. Give me your feedback on the conference. I mean, we had Assad Mahana who came on last week to be able to kind of give us his preview of what he was looking forward to. What were some of your big takeaways from the event this week?
There was a lot, as you recall, a lot of ESG focus. What are we doing with regard to that? And I think the important thing there was, what are we doing? I mean, this is advanced rig technology. So what can advanced rigs help in that regard? So then there was a focus on, drilling for carbon sequestration, drilling for hydrogen storage, etc. And then a reminder, of course, that drilling for petroleum, because petroleum surrounds our life in many ways. And therefore, we're going to need rigs out there being busy. We had a lot of technology. One that was good to see that was up there was one project we've been working on with the ARC committee is the drill bit stuff, which is basically having a new look at the drill bit grading process that's been around since the 80s. There's like 8 factors. Well, now we have so much more data. And this was Sean Emery from Track showing. So people are now using lasers and facial recognition, etc., to have a look at bits and decide in great detail what the dull condition is. So there's a huge project. In fact, you don't realize how much pent-up demand there was for that. But when we started that was initially an Advanced Rig Technology initiative. We said, well, maybe this thing needs to be revamped a bit. It's been around since the 80s. And you wonder, so we started calling around a few people like Paul Pastusik at Exxon, and say, are you interested? Yeah. So we put out.
I would say Paul's very interested. He's kind of heading that thing up, right?
Yeah. Oh no, he's doing a great job. So then we put out this thing. Is anybody interested in this? About 140 people came back, said, yeah, count me in. This is great. Let's go for it. So you realize then how much passion there is for drill bits and getting it right, getting the analysis correct. So since then, that project has gone and become, in fact, there's a paper that a lot of it's been driven, the documentation by Robert van Kulenberg, who was also at Gold's there. I think the document he's put out now is about 170 pages or something. I mean, it's a lot of detail, because now it's not just bits, it's BHAs, and it's what do you do with all this data, and where do you store it, and how do we determine the case histories that we need for training people? If you've got this new system and it's so broad, how do we get people to become familiar with it? So it was good to see that there. Of course, the keynote speakers were great, and we had on the second day we had Jason Garr.
Jason absolutely just blew it out of the water. I mean,
and if you remember right at the end, we said to him, he was talking about innovation and the need for innovation, and we said to him, okay, so what do we need to innovate? What are your priorities? And he came straight back. Get people out of the red zone on the rig. We want more autonomous tools downhole, and we need machine learning to help us with predicting issues, potential failures. So of course, everybody in the room's writing these things down. Okay, that's it. We've got our remit now. Let's get out there. And I think it's important that someone like Jason is saying that, because those of us that have been selling equipment and services over the years, you tend to you go in at a drilling engineer level, and you go in with something new, and the drilling engineer's thinking, what, this looks really cool, but I'm not sure I want to do this on my AFE. So you really do have to get above certain levels within an organization to actually find someone who's got the authority and the budget, if you like, and the drive to get these things up and running. And he showed, if you remember, he showed a graph of technologies that they, it was like what do they call it? The valley of despair. There's everybody's keen as the early adopters, and then there's this valley where this thing sort of hangs around for a while until somebody decides this thing's great, we're going to go for it. But of course, with some technology, they never get to that point. It dies. It died in that valley, and I've seen plenty over the years, and there are some that I've seen. I'm going to go on about wide drill pipe now, which I've had a passion for a long time, which has been in the doldrums, if you like.
Yeah.
But I keep in touch with some of my ex colleagues, technical guys at NOV, and that thing is certainly starting to get some traction. And when you think about what he said about machine learning, looking for problems and helping us predict problems, that's going to require data. It's going to require a lot of downhole data. It's going to require data, you know, from downhole talking to the rig, you know, whole system. And so those sorts of technologies are going to be key to fit what was one of his priorities.
I really think one of my big takeaways was Jason's presentation.
Yeah.
And understanding and knowing that, you know, he has now, you know, culturally, you know, from the top down, gotten a lot of his people to be able to understand that, like, we are looking and we are open to hearing about new technology.
Yeah.
And I think that there's probably a lot of people that were in that room who will go off and tell that story. So I would be really, I mean, it would be amazing just to be able to see how much of an influx that those engineers and that group of that drilling group gets over the next like 2 to 3 months.
Yeah.
People are like, hey, did you hear that Jason, you know, Gar was like, he's like, we are looking for new things. We want to be innovative. We want to see these things. And it's just, it's so refreshing. As I mean, as you've been in the industry quite some time, as you come out with new technologies, you're always searching for that person who's like, who's going to give this a shot?
Right.
You know, who's going to be a participant in this new technology? And that's what you really need, because I think somebody's been on the show is like, everybody in our industry is in a hurry to be second. Nobody wants to be first.
Right.
And so it's looking for those people that are willing to be first and take on some of that risk of the new technology.
Yeah.
It's so hard to find. So that was my big takeaway with Jason's presentation. And I think
because he's an important guy working for a big company, and they don't always have the reputation for jumping in and wanting to be innovative first. So it was great, as you say, coming from him.
That's changing now.
Yeah, for sure. I do too.
So for anybody that's watching that wasn't at the event, if you've got a new technology that you're trying to get potentially, you know, run down hole or try it out or something, you know.
Can you imagine the length of the line outside Jason's door now on Monday morning? Everybody's got a new piece of kit, and we're going to be there.
I mean, but that's the great thing, to be able to be, you know,
that's what you want people to be doing. Yeah.
You know,
But then you've got to have people of, you know, we were talking about this earlier. You've got to give people that are actually in operations the freedom to fail. You've got to say to them, go try that. You know, it's like the Daniel Kahneman story with the coin flip. You know, you've got to, I'm going to have to tell that story now, aren't I?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So he wrote this book, Thinking Fast and Slow. And the analogy there within big organizations, he was saying, if I flipped a coin now and I said, okay, if it's heads, you owe me $1 million. If it's tails, I owe you 5. You'll think, well, that's not bad odds. But there's a 50-50 chance you're going to owe me $1 million. So you're probably not going to go for it. They said a lot of people within organizations are like that. When they look at, you know, if you're running a department, running a rig, this thing's going well, you know. I mean, coming in under AFE, everything's performing well, the crew's doing well, safety's brilliant. Why would I take a risk on something, even if the upside looks huge? But if you're talking to the leader of an organization, you could go to them and they look at it completely differently. Or I guess the message is maybe they should. Because if I got that same coin and I flipped it 25, 30 times for you, you're thinking, okay, now the odds now are probably going to work out in my favor. And I would go for that. But there's going to be a mixture of heads and tails in there. So if you're the leader of an organization, you're basically looking at all those coin flips. So you should be able to say to all your folks, go for it. Take these bets. And I know some of you are going to fail, but on balance, you know, we're going to win. This organization is going to win. But then, as I say, you've got to give people the freedom to go out and try stuff and not be crazy. And we don't want them compromising safety. So we're not talking about it.
Yeah.
But you've got to let people, if you like, step out and try these new technologies. And of course, some of it is a sales job. I remember when I first started selling PDC bits, and that's a few years ago, but they were not then ubiquitous as they are now. And you were walking into a drilling engineer saying, that bit that you're running right now, which is costing you 10 grand, I want you to run this one, which is going to cost you 30 grand or 40 grand. And they look at it like, wow. So what's the deal with this thing, you know? So then you have to be very familiar with the value proposition and what it is you're suggesting. The good thing about that was, I mean, back in the day, you needed to know every aspect of drilling about that well. You need to know, you know, the mud program and the directional program and the casing program so that you could justify exactly what you were doing. And I think that's the case now. When you go in there and you're proposing new stuff, you need to have your ducks in a row with what is the upside here, and what is the commercial upside. So that is one of the challenges.
How do you feel? How has that changed over the years? Have you seen, you know, from the beginning of your career to now, like, have companies essentially stayed kind of the same as far as how they adopt new technologies, like the industry as a whole, right? Has it always pretty much been that way, or has it gotten better at adopting new technologies, like going PDC bits and top drives and then, EDRs and
you can see it's got, when you look at, and one of the graphs that came up, I think Jason again, he was showing, or one of the presentations was showing, you know, feet per day per rig or something, and it was obviously, you know, really impressive. So clearly we have got better at innovating and at people adopting innovation. And as you point out that Jason was saying, that's probably that acceleration is going to continue, which is obviously a good thing.
Anything from the event that you think is going to be the next big wave?
Data clearly is a big wave. We've had this initiative, and this was within the IADC, on data ownership, because clearly the more data can be shared, the better. And so
I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, right. And so I think we're getting to a point, and some people are putting stuff out there, you know, things will be open source. There's a lot of subsurface data that's out there that's accessible to people. So I think that's going to drive a lot of it, is people making it accessible and realizing that we're all in this together, and the more that we can share, the better. So there was a lot of talk of collaboration, wasn't there? And clearly that's key.
What were your thoughts on, you know, either hydrogen powered rigs or rigs with, like, you know, the giant battery packs out there?
The battery packs, clearly they're doing a good job of, if you like, in, you know, when there's a peak of requirement, you don't have to fire up a new gen set, you know, just because you're starting to, you know, pull off bottom. So they're doing a good job of that, and you can measure the emissions based on that, or you can measure the reduction in emissions. So that's another big theme, isn't it? You know, is the emissions. Regard to hydrogen running rigs, I'm not sure, actually, to be honest with you, where that's going to go. But clearly, running rigs off line power, we've seen more and more of that.
Yes.
Which is important, because then it's cutting down the emission. I mean, it's almost, then you have control the emissions, because now you're using, you know, it's coming out of a power station. So as long as you're controlling what's going on there, then you're less worried about what's actually happening at the rig.
Yeah.
So that's clearly a trend.
What were your thoughts on the geothermal panel?
Yeah, so geothermal is really interesting because it requires drilling. So we all like to see that.
Drilling.
And there are various ways, of course. Geothermal, I think it's not sure yet. There were a lot of questions about, can we use old wells? Can we, you know, there are various forms of geothermal. I mean, we go down, and there are some reservoirs, hot rock reservoirs, that already have fluid in. There's somewhere you got to pump water down and the hot stuff comes back. There's somewhere we've drilled, or we can drill a U tube, so it's almost like, you know, you drill two wells and you join them in the middle, and you pump stuff down there, going there. So I think that, you know, I wouldn't say the jury's out, but clearly all applications will depend on the specific geology and the temperature, etc. But it does seem to be, it's going to be an important part of the energy transition. And I think that's, when we talk about transition, we are talking about this mix, aren't we? We're not talking about suddenly we're going to shut down this source of energy and we're going to start this sort of energy. We're talking about, let's look at all these possibilities. And some of them, as the technology develops, some of them will take off faster than others.
I thought one of the great statements was from Cindy, who's the CEO at Sage Energy.
Yeah, right.
She had said that there's so much that geothermal can take away from the oil and gas industry and all of the research and development that we've already done.
Yeah.
Is that there is, it's not just the technology, but it's also the people's skill set and their knowledge and being how to be able to run those operations.
Right.
That, that she said that there's so much of that can transfer over.
And she's from Excel, so she knows that. I mean, she can see how this is going to work.
That's one of the things that I'm really interested in seeing, because I've had Fred Dupreece on the show before, and I've had conversations with him about it, and I don't know if it was something that we actually had on the air or not. But he had told me at one point in time that he said one of the biggest drawbacks for one of the geothermal projects that he was looking at was just basic drilling operations. And in saying that, I'm thinking, okay, what like how basic are we talking? And he said that, one of the rigs, when they had, a bit crap out on them, and they started to trip out, or they were doing any kind of tripping, really, that they were having to lay down singles as they came out every single time that they tripped, and then have to pick up singles as they were going back in. So it was just like, just the basic capability of the rig of not being able to rack a stand back, or at least a single bag, much less doubles and triples. That he said just that alone, he was able to show them the math that says, like, yeah, you guys went with a cheaper rig for a lower day rate, but had you paid for the more expensive one, then even if you didn't drill any faster, any further, just the simple fact of like tripping in and out of the hole, you would have saved, X amount of dollars. And so it's things like that where we think about this transition. It's like there's a lot of value for our industry to be able to take over. And that's the part. It's like, okay, how much of that meat is still left on the bone that we can actually make these geothermal wells more economical? And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, we thought maybe, okay, only 5 wells a year were in the green zone. Now it's how many wells that they could start doing.
So this goes back to a mantra that I used to tell people: you don't get cheap wells with cheap bits, for example, and the same applies obviously with cheap rigs. But Fred is one of my favorite operators because he understood the drilling process so well. Because a lot of people, things would go wrong, and that drill bit was a piece of rubbish, But Fred used to say, unless everything else is working 100%, you're not giving the bit a chance. So everything, the whole cleaning, the rig, the parameters, they've all gone right. So, and that was, when you're in there selling the product, it was refreshing to have somebody that actually had some empathy for what was going on.
Nice to have him across the table.
Yeah.
So who was the best person to sell bits to throughout your career? Who did you enjoy?
Thanks, you're going to get me in trouble now because everybody else is going to go. Well, some of them were good, because in the early days, I used to sell to Jeff Moss when he was with Mobil in Aberdeen. And I enjoyed that because, Jeff, good guy, good to hang out with, but some of in the early days, they would say, okay, I will go for this bit, right? But you're going to have to go out there and run it because this is an expensive piece of kit and I don't want to leave anything to chance. So then I became like the driller's nightmare because I'm stood in the doghouse, This is 20,000 on the bit, not 19. I mean, so, don't keep slacking this, maybe not quite that, but certainly I was there to try and make this thing a success on behalf of everybody in the operation. And of course, it's one of those things when you're on the rig whereby, you still need to be in the doghouse when the company man goes to bed. And you've still got to be there when he wakes up. So obviously the impression is you're there 24 hours a day. So those sort of challenges. But
sleeping in the corner.
Well, you'd go to bed, but you just had to get up early and make sure you were up and about. But you learn a lot, standing in the dock, and that used to. That was one of my things. So I was a mud logger, and because I did geology, but the staring at a microscope at little bits of rock was nothing compared with the fascination of how are we making this hole in the ground. So the mechanical challenge was fascinating to me the first day I walked on a rig, and so I soon became far more interested in the drilling technology than I was in the geology. So I spent a lot of time on rig floors, and of course, in the logging, particularly as logging units have got more and more sophisticated, it was like being mission control, who's got all these flashing lights, and everything on the rig is being monitored, and you could see the well developed as you're there looking at all this data. So it's good.
I can only imagine what it was like at the start of your career, being able to see all of that and then be able to see the transitions that we've gone through and how much faster and more automated and digital everything's become.
Right. And we're getting, obviously we're getting more automated, but we can be more. We started, the DSATS, which is the Drilling Systems Automation Technical Section. And we started that back in, I think, in 2008, something like that. Basically with a remit to let's get everybody fired up about automation. I don't care whether you're the operator, contractor, OEM, service company, and that was achieved, no doubt. And then we got to a point probably a year or so ago where I thought, well, that if that was the remit, we sort of done that. Are we done here? And a lot of people put that and said, no way. No. So now we've got what we're calling DSATS V2, whereby there's still, because how many rigs are in that are fully automatic? Very, very, very few are any of them. And how about the autonomous stuff that Jason was talking about? How much of that have we got? So clearly, the remit of getting everybody fired up, we managed that. But there's still a long way to go, and there's a lot of people working on it. In fact, I was another catch up I did with one of my ex-colleagues at NOV. We're looking at robotics on the rig, because clearly one of the challenges with automating a rig is if you build one from scratch, that's an expensive rig, and they're great. But when a lot of contractors still have rigs sitting in the yard that they want to get fired up, investing in a new one may not be the top priority. So to have kit robotics which are retrofittable to rigs that are already in the fleet is clearly going to help. And I'd say what NOV have done there, they've gone to robotics that already exist. People are using these robots in manufacturing situations and applying those to the rig floor, and even not just the handling of the pipe, but obviously you've got you need something to handle a mud bucket. You need something to dope the pipe. I mean, you see sort of semi-automation whereby there's all the pipe handling going on, but you still got a guy with a brush and a dope bucket that's running out, on every connection. And clearly, we need to quit that as well. Those robots have got to be able to do everything. And I can see that they're getting there. It's good.
Yeah. Speaking of the SPE stuff. Right. I don't want to go too far without being able to bring this up.
Oh, the SPE, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
Tell us what you're doing with the SPE.
Right. So I've been involved in the SPE, various workshops, forums, committees, papers over the years. And then a couple of months ago, I guess, I was invited to, did I want to put my name in the hat as a candidate to be nominated for the technical director for drilling. So yeah,
currently that position is held by David
Reed. Yeah,
right.
So he's rolling off. So the committee, I've only learned this actually since this process started, so I'm not that familiar with exactly the process. But there's about, I think there's 21 people on the board, and every year 3 or 4 people roll off. So there's a lot of continuity, and there's a process they go through of who's going to come on it, and you can see it's a very detailed, and people can you can nominate people, you can invite people clearly, and then they go through then the people that there's a filtering process, and they get to a point whereby they say, okay, here's the last batch of, I don't know what it is, 10 or 12 maybe, and then they go through that in great detail. Once I accept the invitation, I will send a questionnaire. So clearly they want your resume in detail. They'll search out your SPE history in detail, and then there's a questionnaire, and you fill that in, and lo and behold, they told me, yeah, okay, you're going to be the nominee. But then there is a process available whereby people can petition to challenge the nominees, and that's what's happening now. So there are 3 people so there's 3 new people coming on. Robert Martinez, who clicked in there, he's one of them. Hamid El-Mari is the other one. So we're the 3, and there are 3 people challenging those positions, and they're fully within their rights to do that. That's the system, and they needed 1% of the membership to sign a petition to support them, and they achieved that. So now we have an election. So now the best thing now is for members to really get involved, because this now requires the membership to get involved. So every professional member can vote. So tens of thousands of people who can vote. And when you go onto the voting site, you can see all the candidates, and you can see the detail, you can see the questionnaires, and you can see the resume. So I just encourage people to do, whoever, if you're in the SPE, please go and do that. And clearly, whatever the outcome is, the board will live with that decision. That's the process. So, and I think that all the opinions that are being tossed around right now, it's important that we listen. If I do get elected, clearly, you need to have an open, collaborative mind to people who have other opinions about how this should work, and the way the SPE should work. So that will certainly be part of my remit if I get on the board.
Well, I voted for you.
Well, that's it then. It's a done deal, isn't it?
All right.
Yeah.
So for everybody out there that's watching, Tracy, if you would click on the comments, just in case we get any that come up, guys, let us know who you voted for, and if you haven't voted yet, please do. I'm looking at the wrong screen. I should be looking at the camera. So please vote for Robin Macmillan. I have self-nominated myself as his campaign manager. So, but if you guys do have any SPE Technical Drilling Director board person questions or whatever, please feel free to fire those off. We will get to those.
And feel, if after this you want to talk to me directly or on LinkedIn or whatever, then do that also.
Yeah. There we go.
I think, it's important that we take this opportunity to make this a forum about where this is going to go. So,
anything within the SPE that you want to spearhead, like more DSATS, more ISCWSA, more?
More. Clearly, there's we talked about data, and it came up at the ART conference, the need for interoperability. So, do we want machines and systems all to be able to talk to each other on the rig? Sounds like a good idea. So there are initiatives at work with that. There's talk. So I think now there's basically the technical section. There's the DSATS committee. There's the drilling uncertainty. There's the well placement committees. And there's talk of
that one's I'm director at large in that one.
There you go. And then there's there's talk now of geothermal. Do we need a committee on geothermal? And then clearly, the door's open. What else do we need that's technical? That's drilling. It's a big part of what we do, and there's a lot of people out there with a lot of passion for it, which is good. What needs to be organised is an advisory committee, so that when I report to the board, I've got my finger on the pulse of what's going on. So I will need, which David Reed had, a advisory committee, which really keeps you up to date with what's going on out there.
Yeah.
Just to make sure that you are fully informed, when you're actually working with the board.
I think, yeah, I think I remember David speaking about that, and that, some of the things that he was doing. I know one of the big things he pushed them to was during the pandemic was to start doing, live streaming video and be able to start, getting out there and trying to reach the kind of the middle ground audience, because there's a large SPE contingent of students, and then there's a large group that's towards the
so that
latter start parts of their career.
Oh, those guys.
There's a lot of the middle ground that's been missing, and I know that was one of his big things, was to be able to kind of focus in there and try to get more involvement.
The good thing now is that, and I know David was driving a lot of this, is students are now able to join the technical sections, and so
that email just came out this week.
That's huge, isn't it? So I think we need, in fact, there were some students at the Advanced Rig Technology Conference, and I talked to a few of them, and I think it's very important that we engage them, not only technically, which would be good for both sides. I mean, that they can learn what we're doing, we can learn what they're learning and what their focus is, but also on their view of where the industry is going, what the remit of the SPE. So right now we're going in the SPE, and I've seen some of this right now. We're going through analysis of the strategy and the mission, and clearly we need some of the student input to that. It needs to be relevant for them, and they can help us ensure that it's relevant for their contemporaries. So I'm really looking forward to that input and engaging those folks.
Yeah, I think it was really important to be able to see that, one, there were students I know it was an IADC event, but it's a lot of the similar people attend both of those.
Particularly the advanced rig technology, because the advanced rig technology and DSATS has been sort of dovetailed for quite a while. They work really well together.
Yeah. So I think it was great to be able to see the amount of students that were there, participating and asking questions as well.
Yeah.
And so to start doing that within SPE and be able to bring the students in, because I know there have been questions before about them being able to participate or being able to add something to it. And it's, at the end of the IADC event, I know Assad was giving his results of the survey that everybody took. And it was like a glaring problem that the number one thing was HR related. Employee retention, getting new talent into the industry. So to be able to see now that the students can join in, that's great.
That's a big deal. Yeah.
All right. For everybody that's watching, if you do have, like I said, if you've got any questions about
can you read that?
This is unacceptable at the lower management rig level fields. Oh, okay. So this one says, Robin, if the risk of a coin flip is 50% costing 1 million, this is unacceptable at the lower management rig/field levels. You have described the upside as a small and fixed localized, but at upper levels of management field/development, the upside can outweigh the $1 million risk. So risks are typically higher up in the E&P organization. So risk takers are usually higher up in the organization. Thoughts?
Yeah. Good. That's what we're saying, isn't it? The people that are higher up need to be those people that are saying to the people, I take the risk and I take the responsibility for how this works out. And so, you guys that are out in the field, go for it. So I think that was good news, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think.
Okay.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And hopefully the people that are getting promoted are the ones that are, risk takers.
The innovators. Yeah.
All right. Wirepipe had a difficult time with the value proposition just based on drilling time savings versus increased costs. So it has to use increased data, better wellbore, better geosteering, better production, and increased safety as the value. Drilling cost has always been used for the comparison.
Yeah, that's true. There's a lot of things that it needs to improve. So what we're finding now, I was talking to is Andrew Coit at NOV, and he was saying that there's far more focus now on the mitigation of issues that wide pipe can handle. So not just are we drilling faster because we don't have to slow down for an LDBE signal because now we've got 50,000 bits a second, but what does it mitigate in that it's identifying potential pack-offs, etc. But there are some huge upsides. Tell you a story about this was a paper written probably 5-6 years ago now when it was at the SPE conference, and it was Total in the North Sea, and they were using wide pipe. Their hydraulic model told them that we need to quit drilling now. We can't, if we increase mud weight anymore because of the bottom of pressure, we're going to break down the formation of the shoe. So, and that's what their model told them. But because they had wide pipe in the hole and there's pressure sensors up and down the wide pipe, they were able to say, no, actually, we can measure the hydrostatic head at the shoe. And that tells us we can keep going. So they did, and drilled another, I don't know, I'm guessing now 500 meters or something like that. But they did that on 2 or 3 wells. They eventually completed that development with 1 well less, one fewer well. And so that's pretty big saving. A well in the North Sea is an expensive.
Yeah, that's not inside of my budget.
Exercise, right? Yeah. So there's things like that that come up when you can see that. I think if you're a drilling person and you start to see the data, it's just a no-brainer that, yeah. And some of the stuff that we've learned. So, got a bit of history here. When I was at Hycalog and then Reed Hycalog, we used to have a downhole. We called it. It was used in the lab, so it was a drilling research tool, DRT, and that was a data sub above the bit. So you design a new bit, you'd run it in through some sandstone, and then you'd look at the data. And then somebody had the bright idea, well, wouldn't it be nice if that data sub was behind the bit when it was actually out in the field? And then we could actually use it, use some data with the client. Yeah, great. So we used this thing called a black box. And we called it a black box originally because it was more like a post-disaster analysis thing. Somebody accused your bit of being a piece of trash. Well, hang on a minute. Let's just check what you did with it, sort of.
Yeah.
And then, of course, so then we became part of Schlumberger, and then Schlumberger sold a Reed Hycalog to Grant Prico. What have Grant Prico got? Wide pipe. So now, not only have you got a data sub that's memory, now you can link it to a network. So now we can start thinking about, well, now we can see this stuff in real time. And then what happened? NOV come along and buy the whole thing. So now what have you got? You've got a data sub and a network and a control system, and then a programmable control system. So now some of the data that you're seeing, you can actually get the rig to react to it, or you can program. So because one of the things that we found early on when we started looking at the data is, for example, something very simple that we've done for years, tagging bottom. So you crank up the rotary crank and you squeak to bottom slowly because we want to be nice and gentle with the bit, and you tag. But it turns out that doing that, we were just killing bits. As soon as you start to see the vibration from that, particularly if you've got something on a bent housing motor and it's just above bottom and it's dinging around, it turns out with a fixed cutter bit, the sooner you can get it into its footprint, the better. So obviously you're not going to slam it into bottom, but don't hang around and let this thing, we used to think that let's pull up into the shoe when we need to condition the mud, let's pull up into the shoe and just circulate slowly. Well, again, if this thing's on a bent housing, it's rattling around. Yeah, we're just killing it, So once you've learned that, you think, well, okay, what is now the best procedure to tag bottom? And so you can inform the driller. Well, let's do it at this rate with these parameters, and here's the procedure. But even better now, you can program that into the rig, and so now the rig can do it the same way every time. You can analyze what that's doing every time, and you can fine tune it. So now we've got this network, we've got automation. So we've got, if you like, subsystems automated, and that we're starting to now to tie together. So it's good. Data's good.
I completely agree. I think
Yeah.
the data is good, and then being able to do something consistently is great, and then being able to improve upon that. Like Matt Isbell that was there.
Yeah.
He's talked about that with how they did their automation or the remote systems.
Yeah.
That
Right.
all they were trying to do was just get better consistency, and then their
Yeah.
better consistency actually led to
Yeah.
better performance.
You can
across
build
the
on that
rigs.
once you've got consistent baseline. Yeah.
You need to
So-
get Matt Isbell on this show.
Yeah.
Him and John
I could-
Ward
yeah.
together. 'cause they
Yeah.
did
Has
that.
John been on?
Yeah, John's been on.
Okay.
John,
Good.
Mark Anderson.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Yeah.
Handful of those guys.
Yeah.
Oh, look, John DeWart's got a
Oh, here we
question.
go.
Robin, what do you see SPE can do to make the industry more attractive to YPs, young professionals?
Right. That's a great question, isn't it? Which is why I talked just now about engaging more students. So, because we need to ask them that question. And clearly what we've got to do is let people know that petroleum engineering is going to be around for a while. So, we already said that we're surrounded by...
And it's not a bad thing.
Yeah, we're surrounded by petroleum products. It's not just sticking gasoline in cars. And, natural gas is going to be a big part of the energy transition. We've talked about drilling for carbon sequestration, drilling for geothermal, drilling for hydrogen storage. So you're right. So we need to show that this is part of, we're all, from an energy point of view, we're all heading in the right direction. The world's heading in the right direction, and we're a big part of that, and that they can feel proud to be part of that. But we need to help them deliver that message so that they don't feel defensive, when they say they're doing petroleum engineering or they're going to join the SPE. We need to help them deliver that positive message, that this is what we're here for, and we're part of the transition, and a very positive part and a big part.
Excellent. All right. I know that I don't see any of the other questions. Oh, that's way too long for right now. Okay. So one of the other things I wanted to be able to ask you about is, I know that you are a volunteer with a group called Red M.
Yes. Right.
So tell me a little bit about that.
Red M. So this is David Reed. So Red M, there's a lot of non-profits, quite a few in Houston, that support survivors, overcomers, they say, of human trafficking. And they need money. And so David Reed set up this thing called Red M. And I do have a gift for you.
What? I've seen everybody's got these cups, and they always post on Red M
I
Mondays.
noticed the other day when you were on, I think we were probably talking to us, that there's some gaps on your shelf here. So we can help him fill that.
Yes.
Yeah. So to support that, so always looking for money, always looking for volunteers. You can join redm.com and support that, because that is a huge problem, particularly in Houston. It's almost like a hub for it. So so there's a lot going on, and I know David and the group are trying to have heading out there. I think there's someone in Alabama, I think, that's setting up another Red M team. So it's extremely worthy cause.
Yeah. I do know I've done a little bit of volunteering with them, done some podcasting interviews to be able to help out with some of that. And so it's definitely something for anybody that's out there. If you're interested in being able to get involved, you can, I think probably the best person to be able to reach out to is David Reed.
But any of us will put you in contact with David Reed if you don't have David's contact details. So.
I mean, he's more than open to be able to talking to anybody that wants to be able to help out with that. So definitely a worthy cause.
Yeah.
So you've been part of the IADC. You're running for SPE president. You're helping out with Red M.
It's not president, but go on.
Not SPE president.
Yeah,
sorry,
right.
Technical Drilling Director.
Right.
Yeah. I feel like it's a president.
Oh, thanks. Yeah.
Thing.
Yeah.
I mean, as far as the drilling people are concerned, that's
okay.
That's our
I'll have to suggest that.
Yeah.
Drilling president.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. Drilling president.
Yeah.
That'll be fancy on the resume.
Yeah. Yeah.
So all of those things, and then on top of all that, you're also the chief sales
officer. Yeah.
Chief sales officer, almost like manager. Chief sales officer for Data Gumbo.
Which leads me to my next gift, of course.
Wait, there's more?
Because you still have another gap on the thing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
No more invoices.
No invoices. So let me tell you about Data Gumbo. It's
as long as I get invoices paid, I'm okay with them. But,
yeah. Well, the idea is you get paid without there being an invoice. I mean, that's the as I will explain.
Does that one work right there, Tracy? Oh no, we got to go down here. We got to put it right there. I'm not on camera as much, so I probably need to put it on the other side. But yeah, go ahead. Sorry. All right, tell me.
So it's the automation of commercial contracts. So the best analogy, there's a couple of analogies that we use a lot. One of them is Uber. So when you arrive in an Uber, the physical transaction of you being delivered and the commercial transaction of you paying for that service happens immediately. It's done. It's a done deal. And basically it's because everything's in place to enable it. So you've already signed the terms and conditions because you did that when you downloaded the app. Your payment mechanism is in the system. And the data exists to show that, yes, David did go from here to here on this day at this time in this car. So pay up, and you can because all the systems are ready. So the
no need to wait 30 days. No need to involve paper.
Because after 30 days, this invoice arrives in the mail, and you go, hang on a minute, I don't think I went there last Tuesday. That can't be right. So then you start to argue. There's the reconciliation challenge, and then when you eventually, back down, okay, and then you put a check in the mail, and now it's 60 days later. So that's we all know that's the typical. So the other one that we use as an analogy is the gas pump. So there was a time back in the day when, my father would go down to the local petrol station, and he would, fill up once a week, and then he'd get an invoice once a month, and he'd argue with the guy, and then he'd put a check in the mail, and so on. Now, what happens now? We pull up, we swipe a card, pump gas, and go. And again, it's because the data exists. There's one source of the truth, and it's the meter on the pump. So it doesn't matter whether you're the driver or the owner of the gas station, or whether you're ExxonMobil. That's the single source of truth. We all believe that, and because of that, the transaction can take place immediately. So the most simple example from a customer would be a commodity transport. So somebody's got a contract to take a load of stuff, maybe 1,000 gallons of diesel from here to here, and deliver it on a certain day. Well, if you've coded the contract, then the sensors, the coded contract can look at the sensors and say, there's a meter on the truck that says this is how much was delivered. There's a meter on the delivering of the accepting tank that says this is how much I received. And the contract will say, if those two numbers match by, 5% or whatever they agree, hey, go ahead and pay the supplier. So that's as with Uber, that's a very simple example. But the real saving is when the generation of an invoice, and therefore the reconciliation of an invoice, is a complex procedure. So we're doing stuff now with Equinor in Norway, where their service companies on each of the rigs is doing everything. Rather than having a mixture of service companies doing each of the services, they've got one service company doing the lot, and so they're doing the MPD and the Y-line and the MUD and the DD, and so that is, you can imagine that is a pretty hefty invoice, and it takes
be great to be the sales rep on that one. Oops.
Yeah, but it takes a lot of time to generate that. We know it takes. In fact, we had some operations in the Gulf where it's taking weeks to get something out the door, and then of course it goes over the wall, lands on somebody's desk in the operator, and they're looking at this thing, and there's so much. So
and they're having to remember all of this from
and where are they going to
place?
Where are they going to find the data for them to approve this invoice? But if the data exists, then why not allow the data to automatically approve it? So that's what we're doing, and we have investors come through and look at it and go, one day most of the commercial world will be running like this because it makes so much sense. We've got people offshore who are spending a real big chunk of their life shuffling paper instead of being a drilling engineer. And one thing that we've done is, alongside the clients on both sides, said, okay, what does this do for you? Let's try and quantify the value proposition. And in one case, on the drilling operation, the operator said that this has saved over 7% of the total spend just by increasing. Well, first of all, it increases the efficiency of the processing, but it also means that it's accurate. So you eliminate overbilling, underbilling, etc. You know, you're actually paying for for what you got basically. So all that, and plus the saving of the hours, and then of course there are instances where a supplier may say, well, if I'm giving you confirmation on the day, why don't you pay me on the day? Why do I got to wait 30 days now? You got the data. Why are we hanging around? And then the other side may say, well, yeah, we'll do that, but where's my cut? You're going to give me a couple of % off to pay you quick. So that becomes a negotiating point.
Yeah.
And then you've got both sides looking at it as it's becomes win-win. They're both happy with that. And some of them on the other side, we've seen operators or customers who they sign a deal like that. In the past they've signed a deal that say, I'm going to get a discount, because I pay fast. It turns out I can't pay fast. I just cannot process this paperwork fast enough, to pay within the window that we've agreed. So it enables all that as well. And it also, we talk to drilling contractors. We have an agreement with the IADC to basically code their contract, make their day work contracts into smart contracts, because that's what the coding does. It makes the contracts smart contracts, and that's really the key to the whole system is the smart contract reading the IoT data. But now you can have a performance deal whereby you have mutually beneficial KPIs, and then we're talking about collaboration, aren't we? Now we're all in this together, because what's happened in the past, there's a bit of Data Gumbo history. Remember, so our founder Andrew Bruce went to an operator, and the operator said, if I could save 1 minute off every connection in a year, that would save me $250 million in rig time. So you go over the road to your friendly drilling contractor and say, hey, I know an operator that would share these savings with you if you could knock a minute off a connection. And and like me, he's ex-NOV, said, we know you can do that. So why isn't that happening? So, because there were used to be two sets of data. We got our set of data, they've got their set of data, and we just don't really agree. And so key is this single source of the truth. The people need to decide those are the sensors that we both counterparties to the deal. That's what we sign up to, and that's what's going to drive the decision as to who gets paid, how much they get paid, and when they get paid. And
that's such great stuff, because one of my big questions that I've always had, and I've never even really tried to get this answered, is like, where did this net 30, 60, 90, 180 stuff?
Who thought of that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
First of all, who thought of it? And then who agreed to it?
Yeah.
And because I hear from small service companies all the time, and they're like, oh man, it takes forever to get paid.
Yeah.
Especially from some of the larger operators and stuff. And they're talking so they've got to have 6 months worth of working capital before they're going to get paid for jobs. And it's like, man, how do you, trying to be able to plan for that is, that's so essentially you're giving these short-term loans, or if it's 6 months, it's almost,
Right. But they've got to compensate in the pricing somewhere as well. They've still got to make money, when they're waiting for 60 days, haven't they? Sorry.
Yeah, but that just goes back to where, like, if you could get paid instantaneously, because something like that then helps out the service company so that they could put more money back into R&D. They can put it towards hiring people. They can actually start to use that to their benefit, as opposed to having to have this war chest of money that's always sitting there, essentially doing nothing. Because they don't know when they're going to get paid.
Yeah.
They've got to have this cash reserve, as opposed that would take that cash reserve and actually allow them to be able to start using it on things, instead of saying, oh, well, no, we know as soon as this job finishes on the 15th, we know we're getting paid on this day. So we don't need to have another $10 million in the bank account. We can use that $10 million to you know, whatever
Yeah.
the case may be. So
Well,
how have you seen the adoption for this in on the service company sides? Like, I mean, other than getting paid faster, what does
Yeah.
that allow them to be able to do?
It just makes their invoicing procedure far more efficient. So they haven't got people tied up. And then the potential to get paid faster, if you're a service company, as you say, is huge. And what we've seen also, I mean, we've heard this from situations like in construction, where you've got a main contract, but then you've got subcontractors, and they've got subcontractors, and they've got subcontractors. So there's this like cascade of 30 days, and the poor guy at the bottom of the heap, he's hanging around for, you know, well, because people will say, well, I'll pay you when I get paid. Well, how long is that going to be? So in situations like that, you know, we've heard numbers as high as 40% inefficiency in construction jobs because of those sorts of problems. So if it fixes that, then there's a huge upside.
Wow. So what are there any projects that you're working on right now that you could talk about that you're really excited towards?
One thing we've been working on, which is one is this is interesting because it enabled a different business model, is the delivery of production chemicals to a producing well site. So old system, truck pulls up, fills up a tank with some special chemical. And then, you know, the guy writes a ticket, sticks it on the dashboard of his truck, and at the end of the week, you know, they put an invoice together and send it off to the operator. So first step, okay, well, let's have a meter on the tank. So then I know how much you delivered, and I know when. And I can track whether or not the tank ever runs dry, you know. And then some operators said, well, actually, we dose these wells very precisely. You know, we know what chemicals going into each one. And therefore, what we're going to do is we would actually like to pay you on what we consume. Then it's just up to you to keep the tank full. So this essentially becomes vendor managed inventory in the field, whereby now it's changed the business. The availability of the data and the availability of a smart contract enables those different business models. And of course, some supplier might push back at that, say, well, you know, we're doing it. But then others see it, yep, I'll go for that. They see it as a competitive advantage to become part of that and to live off the data. But then, of course, again, we're talking about single source of the truth. So we have to have faith in the data that they're using. So the counterparties clearly have to agree to that.
Excellent.
So, yeah.
All right, Tracy, do we have a couple of questions that have come up for the SPE stuff? That's what it looks like.
More like long comments.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, let's go through one of them. Or what do we
Okay.
get there? Robin, SPE also needs to work on PR for the oil and gas in the general public, not just young professionals. There was a start on this about 15 years ago with some books explaining E&P that were intended for the public. Schools need such resources desperately.
I agree. I don't know who that is, but that's a great point. Because that's where a lot of, even you educate people at school and they go home and then obviously they have the same battle that the rest of them with the PR that whoever that was talking about. We still don't do the best job at PR. I mean, and a lot of it sometimes is, you know, sometimes not helped by the media. I mean, sometimes you'll get a news network and they've got an oil field story, and in the background there's a guy covered in mud throwing a spinning chain. I mean, you know, so clearly, you know, if people perpetuate that on our behalf, then, you know, we need to help them. So I've always said that rigs these days need to look like, you know, there was a time when you walked into the workshop at a motor dealership and there was wrenches on the floor and there's grease everywhere. Now you walk in there and it's like a laboratory.
Yeah.
And I said, I know that's ideally what a rig floor needs to look like. I know we've got challenges. We've got challenges with the weather. We've got challenges with drilling fluid. But now if we're going to have automation and we're going to have robotics and we're going to have, for example, you know, real control of the mud bucket, for example, we need to try and get there. And that's the image that we then want to portray. This is a high-tech operation with people out of the way, which is, you know, at the technological pinnacle of what we can do. And it's so, yeah, I agree completely. PR, I've said this for many years, and I talk to my colleagues at the IADC about as well, and just about what more can we do. So yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Excellent. All right, and the last one here from Robert Estes. For sure, our industry is losing the fight in the court of public opinion as well as in the classroom. We need members to get involved in helping improve energy literacy and to ensure that we are fairly represented in curriculum standards and textbooks.
Energy literacy, that's a great term, isn't it? We need to use that more. So thank you, Robert.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely agree with that one. I mean, just the simple fact that, and I think it's even within our own industry that we need to be able to educate our own people on that it's not us versus them. It's not oil and gas versus wind. It's not oil and gas versus, geothermal or whatnot. Like,
right. Yeah.
Most of this is just energy companies that have, like NOV is very involved with, the wind farms and things of that nature. So, there's a lot of that's happening there.
And again, that's really, as we said, transferable skills. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think just being able to expand on that and being able to let the general public and community know that, like a lot of the drilling contractors have invested into, geothermal companies. These are not just hydrocarbon, drilling rigs or people, that there are other sides to this that, and like you said, at some point in time, maybe we're drilling wells for carbon sequestration. We're drilling wells for geothermal applications, drilling wells for, I've heard stuff here recently. It's like, drilling wells to be able to produce lithium.
Brines as well. Lithium brines. There's all sorts of,
So it's not just the dirty rig site throwing chains. And,
Yeah.
Obviously, it also doesn't help that our industry, I know when there's a blowout and everybody wants to grab their phone and post that on LinkedIn, it's like,
right.
It is news to a certain extent, and it's like, hey, this is happening, but those are the bad hickeys on our industry, and we probably don't need to be putting those out there or sharing, liking, commenting on them. Maybe just send them to your boss and be like, hey, there's an issue.
FYI. Right.
There's something happening out at the rig, but
right. And of course, the ESG, there was a big focus on that. And what we're finding with these commercial things that we're doing with Data Gumbo is that because you're tracking a lot of the operations, you know how far a truck went, you know how long a generator ran, you know if you're doing POB data for people, persons on board for offshore, we know how many helicopter rides, how many workboat rides. And so a lot of the commercial data you can use to track emissions. So we found ourselves with some folks, you've got a commercial invoice you use. Oh, and by the way, here's your emissions report that goes with that operation. So there's a lot of work as an industry that we're looking at, exactly finding the benchmark of where we're at and then improving on it. A lot of focus.
All right. Well, I know we've been going for quite some time.
Yeah.
Rob, thank you so much for being on the show. Do you want to give your last little the technical director campaign pitch?
Well, the pitch really is for people to vote. I'd like people to go to the voting site. They can see, the people there, and you need to make up your mind, I think. So really, that's the message: is vote. We need more and more participation from the wider SPE.
Yeah,
great.
I mean, I couldn't agree more. I mean, this isn't the way that it was meant to take place or whatever. But now that there is an opportunity to vote for everybody out there, be able to go cast your vote, let everybody know. Like I've already said, and I fully expressed, my support is with you. And
what I would like to say, sorry, you just reminded me of something I would like to say, because there have been some extremely complimentary stuff that people have said on my behalf, and I am extremely grateful to that, I have to say. So thank you.
And so we've got one quick little video for everybody here. It's the one right below the 30-second thing, Tracy. Yeah, that one right there. So here's a quick campaign video for everybody.
Vote Robin Macmillan.
I approve of this message. That's
Well,
great.
it's-
Well, thank you, Weston and Brooklyn.
Yeah,
for that.
you
Yeah.
get to meet the
This is campaign team now.
Yeah. Campaign team Gibson right there.
Yeah.
Well,
Right.
thank you so much
It's been
for
great.
being here the
Thanks
past
a lot.
couple of days.
It's been great. Yeah.
I do appreciate it. For everybody out there watching, see, next week we've got the team from Texas A&M who has designed and built a rig design using a architectural design methodology called tensegrity. And so they're going to be coming on the show. So it's not just one person. It's going to be the team. I'm not sure exactly. We still got to talk to them exactly how we're going to do it. If one of them's going to be here, or if they're all going to do it remotely. But it's going to be a really, really interesting conversation. Really would have been a great presentation at the IADC art event. But maybe we'll get them wrapped into the next one. So they're going to be on the show next week. The week after that is Jim Mann, who's actually my neighbor, works at Apache in their supply chain group. So he's going to come on and talk about all things supply chain. It's going to be a really, really interesting conversation. We've got a lot of other shows lined up for in the future after that. As always, like, share, subscribe, follow me on LinkedIn if you're not already. Thank you so much to Data Gumbo, to Robin Macmillan for being here on the show this week. And as always, guys, know your industry.